a song for you.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and we are starting season 14, digging into the one and only Deep Purple album, hosting Joe Lynn Turner on vocals, who has quite an impressive resume, I have to say. I first heard him with Rainbow, which is how I found out Deep Purple was even a band. And I'm not here alone, though. I have a very, very special guest from Pod of Thunder, Chris L. Chris, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Loving your show. I recently listened back to one of my favorite episodes of Pod of Thunder, which was when you went over the song Gangnam Style. Such a blast. You guys had a lot of fun with that one. It's one of those songs that's kind of hypnotic and you just can't get out of your head. And sometimes it's annoying and sometimes it's not.
Yeah, I can't remember ever being annoyed by it, to be honest with you. And that's, we should all be so fortunate to create something so annoying, it's a worldwide sensation. But yeah, no, we appreciate pop music. Really, when you think about it, it's all pop music, but some of it's a little more overt than others. And we all enjoyed it. So it's a good one.
Yeah. Well, you started off doing something similar to what I'm doing here, where you covered the entire Kiss catalog, but you guys didn't want to end your podcast after that. And now you're just doing different songs every week. Is the variety enjoyable? I would think it would have to be, because you're just getting something different all the time.
It is. I mean, we considered some other formats to move forward, and we just, we came together because Kiss was a band that we all enjoyed, and none of us would have any qualms about delving into their entire catalog, which is an insane undertaking when you think about it. And we thought about doing the same thing for some other bands, but just couldn't think of any band that all three of us were on board with to that extent. So we just, decided to open it up to all bands and genres, and hopefully cast a wider net for listeners. We've done more non-Kiss episodes now than Kiss episodes, so we're still enjoying it. So, we're moving forward.
Yeah, and the best part to me is just the way that you guys interact with each other. You're not afraid to give your opinion, which I think is really important in any kind of critical music review, because if you're not saying what you feel, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of what's the point of pretending you like something or pretending you don't like something within the podcast format. I mean, one of the things or I say all the time, and I think Andy and Nick agree, is that, it's the one thing in our lives where we have the full say over, how we operate. We don't get to do that in our jobs. We don't get to do that in our marriages. So we just do whatever we want and express our opinions without any censorship. And that's part of the appeal for us and hopefully our listeners.
Yeah, for sure. I certainly enjoy that. That's exactly it. If what's the point of doing it if you can't really do it? I don't like the idea of lip service. There's songs on this podcast that I honestly haven't liked. There was songs on Uriah Heep, the Magician's podcast, that I just didn't like. And if you're not in an environment where it's free to say that, I guess I feel like people are too critical of, if you don't agree with me, you're wrong. And I like the fact that you guys do not have that element in your show.
Yeah. I mean, some opinions are kind of shocking, amongst ourselves. things that you fully expect everybody to be on board with. It's not necessarily true, and vice versa. So, and we also, we don't pick the songs only on rare occasions have we ever picked a song ahead of time
Mm-hmm.
or been in a situation where everyone on the panel knows what the song is.
Right.
So there's always going to be a sense of spontaneity.
Mm-hmm.
And, nobody comes prepared with notes and opinions and stuff. We try to keep it as off the cuff as possible.
Yeah, I first time listens are great, and they every once in a while I think I'll never hear this for the first time again, and sometimes it's a great experience, and you really wish you could relive that.
It is, yeah. We were just recently had that with we had Chris Jericho on again, and we did another Ozzy tribute album or episode um, from the Ultimate Sin, Shot in the Dark. And I never owned either of the Jakey Lee albums, and that's what Jericho said. He's like, I almost wish I was you, because I said after the episode I would listen to the whole album.
Yeah.
And Jericho said, I almost wish I was you listening to this for the first time again. So
that's very cool. Yeah, there's so many I would love to do that with. I think for some reason, Nazareth Hair of the Dog comes to mind. I absolutely love that album, and to be able to hear that again for the first time would be pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that stuff out there, and we should just be glad we heard it at all, the classic albums. And so yeah, and to segue into what we're going to talk about today, this is another one. I was never heard anything from this album. In fact, I wasn't even aware that this album and this lineup existed until somewhat recently. I wasn't aware of it when it came out. So this was these two songs that we're going to talk about today were new discoveries for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was kind of surprised because I know that you're a fan of Joe Lynn Turner, and obviously you're a fan of Deep Purple. So it's interesting sometimes the things that escape us. Sometimes we're really busy in our lives and things just go by and we don't know about them. Plus, this wasn't a heavily publicized release, at least not here in the States.
Yeah. And I was thinking back on it. I looked it up when it was released, and I was kind of in a transitional period in my life. I graduated college a few months earlier that year, and I tried to get my stuff together and get a job so I wouldn't have to move back with my parents, and I was unsuccessful in that endeavor. So I at the time I had been moved back with my parents for a couple months, and I was not too enthused about it. I wasn't really I kind of felt like I was going to move into adulthood, and I wasn't really into music as much as I was in college. So that partially explains how that one eluded me.
Yeah, I that's certainly understandable. And you and I are both from the Detroit area, and I was going to ask you because I was trying to think back of the radio stations I used to listen to. Obviously, WRIF would have been probably the biggest one, but I remember there was WLLZ, WHYT, which was I think more of a pop station. And then I think CKLW was AM, maybe?
It was AM 800. Mm-hmm. In the 70s, there were two other rock stations. So there was W4, WWWW, which Howard Stern got a start. Or if not a start, he was in very early days, he worked there. Mm-hmm. And then in between ABX and RAF on the dial was LLZ, and RAF on the dial was WABX 99.5.
Yeah.
So Detroit had 4 full tilt AOR rock stations on the FM dial in the 70s. So there was no shortage of places to get your rock on the FM dial.
No doubt. And of course, we were so close to Canada that sometimes we could get in some Canadian stations. I remember Bob and Doug McKenzie had a call-in show where they would actually play the Beer Hunter, and that was always a lot of fun.
Of course, yeah, yeah. The whole Strange Brew and the takeoff with Geddy Lee was huge in the Detroit area.
Yeah,
And like you
absolutely.
said, CKLW on the AM dial, it was my first kind of introduction to rock music, but that was a variety of station. I mean, you'd hear Bad Company followed by a disco song, followed by some Zeppelin,
Mhm.
and then James Taylor and stuff was all anything goes at that station.
Yeah.
So yeah, that combined with the K-Tel albums that my mom would buy for me, that's when I first started to appreciate a variety of music. But obviously, I was drawn more to hard rock stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I do an album a day post where I'm going through all the albums in my vinyl collection, and just about finished up with that. But I've got a number of KTEL albums that, man, what a great time between that and Columbia House. I think we had it good.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, nowadays, we can argue about how the artists are getting screwed on residuals, blah blah blah. But with the streaming services, almost everything ever released is right at your fingertips. If you have the urge to listen to whatever's on your mind, you can punch it up and have it immediately.
Yeah.
Um, so, so I think if you're not somebody who needs the physical media, and if you can be okay with the fact that artists aren't getting paid very much from the streaming services, I mean, we're in another sort of boon for listenership, in my opinion. Everything's right there at your fingertips.
I would absolutely agree with that. I've got a little clip I want to play from Ian Pace talking about this album and the era of Joe Lynn Turner, since this was the only album he was in the band. I first heard him, probably Stone Cold was the first
Yeah.
song, and then Death Alley Driver because of MTV days. What was your entry point into Deep Purple and your connection to Joe Lynn Turner?
Deep Purple. Um, I think I probably heard Smoke on Water on CKLW or any of the FM radio, rock radio stations in Detroit, and all the radio hits, and just that draws you into exploring their catalog. And then Joe Lynn Turner, I'm the same way with you. I heard the Straight Between the Eyes stuff, and then doubled back to Difficult to Cure, and then I was on board when Bent Out of Shape came out. So, when that I was consuming that music in real time when it was coming out.
Yeah.
So yeah, similar to you.
I think we could probably agree that speaking of Bent Out of Shape, Can't Let You Go, one of the greatest vocal performances ever.
If not the greatest vocal performance, at least tied for the top. I always like to say that with stuff of that on that level, you might find stuff that's equally as good, but you're gonna be hard pressed to find something that's better than that, in my estimation. I mean, just the choruses are just that's just incredible vocal performances, and JLT at his peak, absolutely.
Absolutely, and he still sounds good today. He just did a
Yeah,
performance with the Graham Bonnet Band, which was a nice surprise.
yeah,
Right
that's
around his
cool.
birthday, which was great. Conrad, Graham, Bethany, they were all really excited to perform with Joe. Said they had a great time. So yeah, he's still doing it. Where I
Yeah,
start to get lost with some of the artists, and I hate to say this, but Joe's gotten very political. He left the States, which is fine, but he's not shy on the political commentary, and it's just something I'm not interested, and it kind of makes me distance myself from the artist and wanting to hear interviews because I know they're going to go in that direction at some point. How do you feel about that?
yeah, I'm not a fan of it, but I understand why, if people feel, especially guys like him who have a certain level of celebrity and have a wider audience, if they feel strongly about something,
Mhm.
that's everybody's right to express themselves in that way. Um, yeah, I'm generally not a fan of it. I turn to music for escapism from all that crap.
Mhm.
So, but in many cases, I've learned to separate the artist from the art, and the person from the artist, and it's not something that would ever, unless it got super extreme one way or the other, it wouldn't be anything that could tarnish my opinion of Joe Lynn Turner. I just, and also just in general, as people get older, they get a little more outspoken about stuff, a little more curmudgeonly, if you will, and that's just part of the aging process, I think.
Yeah, I'm slowly turning into old man yells at cloud. I have no doubt of that, as I get up there in years. Well, let's before we go any further, let's play that clip from Ian Paice and see what he has to say about Joe's time in the band. And I do have to say that I think it was a very important time for the band. Gillan had been fired again. Well, really fired
Right.
for the first time, and it was there was a lot of turmoil, and the band really stood on the edge of breaking up. And I think if they had broken up at this point, I don't know if we would have them today. I really don't. So I will say, if nothing else, Joe was very important for that. And here's what Ian Paice had to say.
And then Joe Lynn Turner comes in for a while, doesn't he? Gillan leaves again, then Joe Lynn Turner.
Yeah, well, the thing with Joe Lynn, it's a two sides of the coin thing. Joe was never the right person for the band, but we couldn't find anybody who could sing. What Joe can do is sing.
He's a great singer.
But Joe gave us something totally invaluable. He gave us a year to get things sorted and get Ian back in the band again. Without that year, it would have just fallen to pieces and stopped again. There was no way that Ian and Richie would be able to get together in that short period of time again. That year, 15 months, whatever the hell it was, gave it time, the water time to settle.
I can't thank Joe enough for that, because you think about everything that Purple's done since then, starting from The Battle Rages On all the way up through Equals One, the new album they're working on. To think that none of that would exist is a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, and you never know if they could have gotten it together if this hadn't happened. But to take them at their word, and also just sort of understanding similar dynamics in other bands, it's best to just keep the momentum going, just to keep people interested, and both in the band and in the audience. And the guy comes in and does the job, like Ian said, that's invaluable. I mean,
exactly.
And just say that he could sing is obviously an understatement. He's
Yeah.
one of the all-time great vocalists to me.
That's like saying a cupcake will probably be delicious.
Well, or saying, and Richie could play guitar a little bit, it's just, and I get it. It's, I don't get the feeling that Paice is downplaying his talent. I think he's just saying that, it's the singer is, it's hard to find somebody who can, step into that role, especially in Deep Purple. And, for Joe to step in and do what he did is, obviously a key moment in the band, whether or not it was the right thing or a recipe for longevity.
Well, and that's part of the reason that you see the Deep Purple family tree being so really not as big as you might expect, because there's only so many guys that can do the job, that can handle the immense touring and pressure that they're under. And it's hard to find somebody that could do that, let alone somebody who can just sing well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And plus you get into a situation where, you're going to take this act on the road. Probably you gotta have somebody who can sing that back catalog, and we all know that Ian Gillan and also probably, I don't know how much Coverdale material they did, but both those guys, that's a high bar in terms of recreating those vocal performances. So.
Well, we did meet up in Chicago right about a year ago and got to see Deep Purple play. Didn't they just sound fantastic that night?
Oh, yeah, amazing. That was my first time seeing them. And I mean, Ian Gillen, he just recently turned 80, right? At the time, 79. I mean, I'm sitting there watching this and I'm like, and before we started recording, we were discussing my recent hip replacement surgery. So a year ago, I was still experiencing that bone on bone pain in my hip. And I was, 57 at the time, and I'm watching guys pushing 80. And I'm like, man, I should really get this looked at because I want to be like them in 22 years, not who knows what, decrepit and, disabled and all that. I mean, those guys were inspiring to watch that.
Yeah, for sure. And I thought that was one of the best. I've seen a lot of Deep Purple shows, and that was one of the best performances. And it's the oldest I've ever seen them, but they had great energy. Ian sounded great. They were firing on all cylinders the whole night.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't have anything to compare it to as my only time seeing them, but yeah, it was on point, absolutely.
Well, let's go back to October of 1990 when Deep Purple released Slaves and Masters. The last comment I'll make before we get into our first song, King of Dreams, is that this was, there was one thing about the band that was a little weird at this time. When Joe joined, they seemed to, and apparently this was something that he and Richie had talked about. They wanted to find a visual direction for the band, so they started wearing leather. They started posing a little bit differently in photos. And I get it. You want to be a little bit trendy to get into the limelight, to sell records, to gain fans. But that's really the only time that they've ever done that. And I wonder if that doesn't play into maybe them feeling like he didn't really fit into the band as a long-term member.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it is an important part of it. And I don't know if it was just, having him in the band that sort of steered it in that direction. I don't know if those two necessarily coincide with each other, but it's different, especially with a legacy band that 20 plus years in their career at that point, iconic songs, dozens of them, sort of trying to get with the time, so to speak. But, it 9 years into the MTV era, visual image is super important.
Yeah, for sure. And they did have a couple videos. This was one of them. You mentioned the Coverdale era. They did perform Burn, actually, during this time, because they would have never done that when Gillen was in the band.
No.
And I asked Roger Glover, I said, was it weird? Because he had to leave the band right before Burn also. And I said, was it weird to play that Deep Purple song that you weren't on? And he looked at me and he went, yeah. So I know he and Ian had both said for the longest time, like they never listened to it. Of course, they both had, but it was just, as Ian put it, do you want to know who your wife is sleeping with after you get divorced?
Right. Probably not.
Yeah.
But in the case of the music, I mean, those are iconic. So that one especially, it's like you kind of have to suck it up and play that one because the crowd's gonna want it.
Yeah.
But
great track. Great track.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's check out King of Dreams. Here we go. What do you think of this so far?
So the two things that kind of hit me right off the bat with the opening part of this song is it's and I looking back, this was the first single from the album, right?
Yes.
It's a little down tempo. There's like not a ton of. It's not super energetic to my ears. And the other thing is, when it comes to John Lord, I want to hear that B3 through a Marshall stack. It's a little more synth heavy, sort of keyboardy versus organy, if that makes any sense. And So that's what I'm sort of like keyed in on, was that, you know, a little more synth heavy in the keys than I would prefer to hear.
Yeah, and coming off a House of Blue Light, which was very synthy, incredibly synthy album, he's starting to get back to the Hammond, but yeah, there's still a lot of that on this. I like the pulse of this, but you're right. For an album opener, you expect a Highway Star, a Speed King, you know, something that's going to just hit you right in the face. And it's an interesting way to introduce the new band.
Yeah, and you know, with the reunion, the 84 reunion knocking at your back door, granted it takes some time to build into when the whole band kicks in, but you know, there's definitely a higher intensity, energy level once that happens. And Bad Attitude, same deal for me. I think it had a little more punch to it than this. I actually totally agree with how you put it. The pulse of this song is, it's good, it's intriguing, it's holding my interest, but it's not like I don't know, it's not reaching out and grabbing me.
Yeah, I would think this would be a good second or third position. You know, if you're coming off of a heavy opener, maybe second or third would be good.
Yeah, depending on what else you got. But yeah.
I mean, thinking of like Straight Between the Eyes, you've got Death Alley Driver, and then you go into Stone Cold, like kind of more of a setup like that, you know?
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. It really doesn't mean a thing. It doesn't matter if you like the song. As long as you can hear me sing. Goes on the phone and every little girl's rose. You know I cut but never bleed. A shadow in the night, your delight.
I like when Joe sings in this voice. The problem I have with it is that it's kind of getting buried with bass and keyboards, because he's singing in a similar register, and I would like his voice to cut through a little bit more, but I like when he sings in this tone.
Yeah, then you know, when he's singing in this tone, he's not unleashing the full power of JLT. So you do need to rely on sort of little boost from the mixing to get it where you need to hear it. But no, I listened to it a few times in the car today, and it sounded pretty balanced to me, like where you'd want it for how he's delivering the vocal.
Yeah, and his voice sounds as strong as ever.
Oh, when is it not? I can't think of a time. I mean, seriously, I just and I appreciate the Deep Purple podcast guys gave me the privilege of being the guest host for all three JLT Rainbow albums on their show. And, you know, I appreciate you having me on for this one. I just, never got tired of talking about the guy. Just extremely underrated in the grand scheme of things. But just from a technical perspective, emotional perspective, tone of voice, I mean, he just checks all the boxes.
It's kind of sad to me that he never found bigger success. He just didn't seem to find the right combination of people to work with. But you know, he did an album with Yngwie, and that was a decent album, but that wasn't going to have a future.
No.
He just never really found the right combo, which is a shame, because he's one of the most talented singers I've ever heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, as they say, the intent of his era of Rainbow was to sort of tap into the corporate rock scene of Foreigner, you know, Styx, REO Speedwagon, that sort of thing. Yeah. And they never achieved that level of popularity. I mean, they were, you know, they had some big radio hits, MTV videos and stuff, but no, in the grand scheme of things, he's just super underrated for his level of talent.
For sure. But man, I mean, we talked about one song, but Street of Dreams is another one that I think he just sounds fantastic on. And one that was pretty popular. But if you guys listening haven't heard Street of Dreams from Bent Out of Shape from Rainbow, check that out. He sounds top form on that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that they let the music breathe a little bit before bringing the vocal in. Sometimes bands just go right into the next verse, and I like having a little bit of space sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes that's the decision of the producer and the record label. They want to condense songs, especially songs that are singles, to get them in that sweet spot, 2.5, 3 minutes or so or whatever. But a great chorus, I mean, you can understand why they picked this for the first single. That's, to me, is on the strength of the chorus.
Yeah.
Just a great chord progression, melody, all that stuff.
And he kicks
So-
into a more powerful voice too, right off the bat.
Sure,
You're like, I'm done with the verse. Now it's time to unleash a little JLT, and he lets us have it.
Oh yeah, yeah. A master of dynamics is just another feather in his cap. I mean, he knows what he's doing. You'll never hear me say a bad word about JLT, but it's not. None of it is unjustified. The praise for him.
Sure. I feel like there are singers who know how to tell a story and those who just know how to sing the words on a page. And one thing I'll say about Joe is he knows how to bring out the dynamics of the story and not just the words.
He does. Yeah, he's bought into it. He never phones in a performance, and yeah, you're exactly right. He's engaged in whatever material he's performing. You can tell.
For sure.
Difference, what you got. It doesn't matter what you lose. Don't make a difference if you like it or not. Baby, I'm gonna change your attitude. 'Cause all around me there is mystery and wonder. Now can't you see it in my eyes? I'll crack the sky, make you feel the thunder. You'll never see through my disguise.
I like that he's got a little bit of grit in his voice here too.
Oh yeah, yeah. The whole thing is, there's a compared to the first verse, the first verse, the second verse is, coming off that chorus has got a little bit more intensity, and that's something I definitely appreciate. We're talking about dynamics, but levels of intensity that build, drop a little bit maybe when necessary, but I definitely like songs that seem to have a slow build throughout the whole thing, and that rises up to a crescendo toward the end.
Yeah, I've noticed, really listening to these songs critically for the first time. I mean, songs that I was very familiar with, I found things in there that I'd never noticed before. And one thing that I noticed is it's fairly common in a lot of Purple songs where the first verse will be incredibly simple and straightforward. They'll build, whether it be adding little guitar licks in there or, something different in the beat or the bass line. They really are good at building throughout the course of a song.
Yeah. Talk about it, in a lot of our analysis on Pot of Thunder, but the classic techniques of tension and release, it goes all the way back to classical music, probably even earlier than that. But that's stuff that just keeps somebody, a listener especially, engaged and sticking around to see how that everything gets resolved, you know.
Right. Yeah. Because if it's just copy and paste, if you have the whole song within the first minute of the song, there's no reason to listen to the other 3 minutes.
Right. And that, you know, go into old man mode and say, you know, that's what I hear a lot in modern rock. It's all cut and pasted and moved around. And it's like, you know, you get the sense that when the singer nailed a chorus, they just copy that, paste it throughout the song. There's no, you know, build variation or anything like that. So
Yeah, I want to hear a slightly different approach. I want you to be more angry, more upset, more emotional, just something to show me that you're feeling it more as the song is going. You know, that it should be a progression.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mhm. Now that's a perfect example because he's saying that
Yeah.
completely different than the last chorus.
Exactly. And you just don't hear that anymore nowadays. It's like the producer will be like, okay, we got to take, let's just keep that as the chorus take through the whole thing and move on. And it just, you know, takes the humanity out of it, you know.
A very Mutt Lange style of producing a band.
Kind of, although I don't think he ever necessarily went to that extreme. It's just, if anything, he just, you know, I don't think he hardly ever settled on a take. I mean, the scuttlebutt about him is he'd make people do it 100, 150 times, you know, really breaking people in the studio, you know.
That's just crazy.
It is crazy. It's a little excessive, but you know, who are we to argue with the results that guy's gotten? I
Yeah,
mean,
at the end
you
of the
know.
day, we're left with some pretty incredible music. I
Yeah.
remember hearing a story. The bass player on Billie Jean, Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, they had done 50 some takes, and the producer walked back in the room and heard what they were doing. He goes, "Play the second one again." Okay, we're doing that. And just kept the second take after all
Yeah.
that work. But sometimes
Yeah.
it goes that way.
It does. Yeah, the studio is there's pressure in there. I mean, I recorded a couple albums, and I always enjoy. The best part of the studio is once you've settled on a performance, then you go in and do the mixing. That's the fun part, is when you listen back and experiment with stuff. But when you're in there laying down the initial tracks, that's pressure, especially with, you know, time is money in the studio, especially when you're on an indie level. You know, you don't have the time to write an album in the studio. You got to come in, rehearse, and get it down, and that's pressure, you know.
That it is.
And then, you know, then to have to do it over and over again, as I can see how it could break some people.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Ian Pace once said, if you can't get it in 3 takes, don't try anymore that day. You know, because after that, you're going to start thinking, what was that one thing I did? And you're going to be focusing on that, trying to replicate it. It's not going to be natural anymore. You're going to overthink it. And I have to say, I pretty much agree with that.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, I think after, you know, at a certain point, frustration sets in, and you're not, it's not, you're trying to force something to happen that's not necessarily happening. So, you know, I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah, but if you've got Stanley Kubrick directing your recording session,
Well,
you know,
well, yeah,
that's tough.
it just depends on who you're working with, what your budget is, what the, you know, what the end goal of the project is. But, you know, I mean, like you said, if you know going in that if you're doing a movie with Kubrick or an album with Mutt Lange, that, you know, you better prepare yourself for what it's going to be like.
That's true. If you don't know what you're getting into walking in the door with somebody, really any producer, you should research them, you should know what they're all about, what their approach is before you make an agreement with them. So you should know
Yeah.
what you're getting into for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's just part of the game.
Mhm. It's a lot of that pulse that we got from the beginning and through the majority of the song. The song doesn't have a lot of movement to it.
Not really. And like I said, I mean, up until that section, I mean, I think Blackmore's playing wasn't especially inspired. You can even say the same thing about Pace's playing. I mean, you're not getting any of those swing beats or any flash from him. It's all just very four on the floor. But in the middle section, they kind of lapsed into that sort of kind of weird quasi Middle Eastern stuff that Ritchie would bring to the table, and made just started to get a little more interesting. And then with Joe Lynn Turner bringing almost the Robert Plant isms into it, kind of just listening to it, you're getting the live concert vibes. Like this is a song they would stretch out and jam to, which they did on just about all their stuff back in the day.
You don't get a lot of just atmospheric patches from Deep Purple. This is a pretty rare piece.
Yeah.
It's nice when they do it, but it's just not something we see a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it definitely started to make the song, musically speaking, a little more interesting and a little more connected to what you're used to, not necessarily atmospheric, but more of the musicianship and what they were known to do in concert. You're getting a little taste of that here.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ian Pace. You're right. He's pretty straightforward here. I will say, though, the drums sound good. The toms are cutting through. They're nice and bright. That snare's got a good snap to it. I always say I could use a little bit more kick drum, but that's because I'm a drummer.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I like to kick drum to the point of too much kick drum. Is give me too much and then ratchet it back from there.
I'll tell you, the night before you and I met, when we saw Deep Purple in Detroit, 2 seconds into Highway Star, when he's hitting that kick drum, I thought I was going to break a rib.
Yeah,
it was cutting through pretty hard, and I really loved it though.
Yeah, well, that's what you want.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I'm good with that.
Yep.
Emotion knows ways through again and again. I know just how to please you. Now your mind is on the bend. Can't you feel the power? So moving my arms beyond the witching hour. We're traveling on and on.
I like that build up into the chorus there. That sounds really good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think as it goes on, you're not getting any sort of noticeable infusion of energy, or the tempo is not ramping up a bit, but it's progressively gotten a little more interesting just with all the elements weaving together.
Yeah, and we have had a little bit of Hammond, but it's not the Hammond running through the Marshalls. It's the percussive
not.
Hammond, which
Yeah,
it sounds good for this song, but I would
it
like I,
does.
I would like a little grit in the organ to match Joe's voice a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you there, 100%.
Fades out really fast.
Yeah, kind of does.
I'd like a couple more seconds on that. It's sometimes when a song fades too fast, it just feels incomplete or unsettling. There's just something weird about it to me.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I listened to these songs in the car today.
Mhm.
And so with all the ambient noise, I didn't really pick up on that. But yeah, they could have stretched that out a little bit longer. I don't know. Does it flow into the next song, or is there
No.
yeah. Yeah, they could have made it flow into the next one or something like that. But
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can think of is thinking about this was released on vinyl. So if it was a time limitation and they're really trying to squeeze out every last second, sometimes you have to sacrifice a fade. But overall, what are your thoughts on the song?
I like the chorus is fantastic. I mean, that's the high point of the song. Yeah, just in general would have liked a tad more energy, not a ton more, because this song doesn't lend itself to that. But it's just like the drumming is kind of plodding. Richie's part isn't especially inspired to my ears. That sort of lick he's playing, until you get to the middle section. It just sounds like something that you would play when you're working out a song, that you're just like feeling around for what the right thing is, but then you're going to come up with something better, and you just never did that.
Yeah.
It's not terribly inspired to my ears. I think the best part about it is the vocals and the chorus. So
Yeah, I honestly feel like the best performance on this is Joe. He's putting passion into it. He's not copy paste at all. Every chorus has been a little bit different. But everybody else, even Richie, I would have liked some fill-ins from Richie, maybe in between some of the lines, other than just that one lick over and over. Something that, is he's done in so many songs before, even if he's just playing one or two notes and holding them for a little bit of more ambience or to break up monotony. But I don't really think the song went anywhere.
yeah, it didn't. I mean, the middle section's kind of interesting and draws you in as a listener, and also someone would be familiar with the band's previous stuff. That sort of draws you back into that. But yeah, it's just not like I said, it's not terribly energetic or inspired, is really just how I would boil it down.
And certainly in consideration of that, it makes it even stranger for an album opener because it doesn't ramp up at all.
Right. And, you're essentially announcing a new lineup here, at least a new singer. You want to, grab people a little harder than that, I think.
Yeah, and also, I mean, and it's certainly natural when John Lord and Ian Pace joined Whitesnake, it became, Purple Snake is what people were calling them. You're going to get Deep Rainbow just because you've got three members of the Rainbow lineup here. But I do feel musically they did kind of shift in that direction. But your three primary writers from Rainbow were Roger, Richie, and Joe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm not. Yeah, you would know more than me how the hardcore Deep Purple fans responded to this album, whether they liked it or hated it or whatever. But yeah, you just can't, especially, it's all tied to the voice, and you just can't, you can't, uh, you can't get away from the comparisons of those three Rainbow albums, which is fine with me because I thought those were all excellent. And whether or not you like that direction, they pursued that direction and did a great job of it. And so you're going to get that comparison. I definitely hear the similarities, but like I said, it's just lacking in intensity and punch and energy to me. But a great chorus and outstanding vocals, of course.
I would agree. I think this is one of the songs on the album that it's an okay album track as an opener. It's a strange choice, but really the vocals save it for me. If it wasn't for a really solid vocal, I'd probably just not listen to it.
Yeah, no, I would, again, just on the strength of the chorus, because like I said, I don't recall ever hearing this before. So when I was listening to it the first time in the car, up until the chorus, I was like, okay, this is a snoozer. This is, I'm not going to have much good to say about it other than the vocals. But then when that chorus kicked in, I was just immediately like, okay, that's good. All right, now I get it. Now I understand why they picked it as a single. But it's sure the build up to the payoff. It was, took a while to get to that point for me.
Yeah, same here. And as I recall, the video was like two kids on a roller coaster at a carnival, typical boy-girl story. And then in between that was shots of the band playing, trying to make it look live, but shot in a studio. And then they pass through a tunnel, and all of a sudden the boy's not there and the girl starts freaking out. And I have no idea what the video had to do with anything, but it was a video.
Yeah, you can say that about a lot of videos from certainly the early era. It was just basically like these directors had carte blanche, like whatever their vision was, you couldn't question it because it was a new medium and they knew what they were doing supposedly. But there were so many just embarrassingly bad concept videos, and it's just it was just a sign of the times.
But the good thing about it is it did give bands the opportunity to be seen by people that might not have found them otherwise. I think MTV was a real benefit. Bands like Whitesnake, who David Coverdale himself said, we were failing financially. I was $1 million in debt, and then Still in the Night and Here I Go Again come out, and all of a sudden, boom! Everybody loves Whitesnake.
Yeah, I mean, once everybody got the MTV on their cable package. I don't think we got it immediately when it first came out, but it was like within a year.
Yeah.
The first thing I did when I came home from school was I turned on MTV, watched it all weekend. If you were a music fan, you were watching MTV because it was new and exciting, and I was definitely more of a fan of the performance videos when you got kids riding roller coasters and a Deep Purple video. It's just like, okay, this is just some director's cheesy vision. And like I said, the relative newness of the medium, everybody just took these guys at their word. Guys, women, whoever was directing the video, it'd be like, well, we don't know anything about the visual medium, so we're just gonna go along with whatever they say.
Right. And
we all know what the big embarrassing videos are out there. We can all list them off, and it's crazy stuff, but that's how it was back then.
I remember my big thing was just waiting for the rocket at the beginning of the hour to find out, what 3 songs were guaranteed to be played.
Exactly. Yeah.
See who Martha Quinn was going to interview.
Yeah, and of course the Straight Between the Eyes concert down in Texas. That was one of their Saturday night concerts. That I remember watching that while I was packing up my hockey bag and getting ready to head out. You would rent out the rink at like 2 a.m, and watch that to get psyched up for a hockey game. It was awesome. It was great.
I'll tell you a quick story before we wrap up this episode, and I'm really excited to talk about the other song we're going to talk about because I think you might find that a little more interesting. My great grandmother was visiting from Germany, and this was, of course, back in the days where you would wait with people at the terminal until their flight took off, and then you would stand there for another 20 minutes waving at them whether they could see you or not. And there was a big storm coming in, and we were worried that we were going to lose power, that we weren't going to make it home in time to see that concert, Live Between the Eyes, the very first broadcast of it. Fortunately, we made it home shortly before. I taped the whole thing on my little Panasonic red cassette recorder because that was the only way you could do it back at the time. Because this is really even before VCRs. And I remember that day, and that concert was absolutely amazing. First time I had seen any show like that. And that was the night I found out Deep Purple existed.
Yeah. I remember it vividly myself. So yeah, good stuff.
Great stuff. Well, Chris, thank you for joining me for this episode. I'm really excited to talk to you about our next song. But before we get to that, folks, it is Monday, and I do take a little time out on Monday, even though I think about you guys every episode. I post first to my website, and then every episode gets a special post in the Patreon to the paid subscribers, and then some posts go to all of the subscribers. And it really means a lot to me that you guys find enough value in the show to want to give a little bit back. Thank you very much. You can also leave a review on Apple Podcasts, or at least a rating would be nice. I don't always see, I don't see who leaves the ratings, but I do see who leaves the reviews. And those do get copied over to the website once they show up through the app. So please feel free to take a moment to do that. But at the $5 Money Talks tier, we have William Rose, podcasting magnet Corey Morissette, another podcasting giant Nate, another podcasting giant Mark Roback, and Kyrune Olson. Thank you all at the $5 Money Talks tier. Also, at the $1 No Need to Shout tier, we have podcasting giant Peter Gardeau. We have Zawapper the Electric Alchemist, Sick Tone, and Matt R. Also joining us in the Patreon, we have Kenny Wymore, Anders Engstrom, and Steve Coldwell. Thank you guys all so much. It means tons to me. And I thank everyone who has shared, liked, subscribed to any of the socials. But, the most help you can give me is if you don't want to donate to the Patreon, which would be obviously the way that you could help the most, would be to do the Apple Podcast review, or to at least share the episodes, let people know about the podcast. There's tons and tons of Deep Purple fans out there. Not everybody knows that this exists. So thank you guys so much. You have a great day, and we will see you in the next episode. I look greatly forward to a future episode this season having Chris L. back. We're about to record that episode now in real time, but that will air in the order of the songs because that's how I've done the whole damn show. Why would I change it now? Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thanks for listening.